It is just before sunrise in the lower terraces above the village of Beit Horon, in what is now the central West Bank. The light is still gray. The terraces step down the hill in roughly 3-meter increments, each one held by a dry stone wall that has been there longer than any villager can remember. On the topmost terrace, an old man is walking the rows of his vineyard. He is not pruning. He is not pulling weeds. He is looking at the ground. What the ground looks like in the hour before sunrise on a morning in late autumn in 700 BC is a covered floor. Layered organic material between the rows, pruning debris from last winter, the leaf fall from the fig and olive trees that border the vineyard, fragments of straw left from the threshing floor down the hill. The depth, where he stops to brush at it with the side of his sandal, is roughly 4 inches. He nods. He moves on.
That floor is one of 17 practices that ran in this region simultaneously for centuries in the agricultural systems that produced the abundance described in Deuteronomy 8. The verse describes a land of brooks of water, of fountains and depths springing forth in valleys and hills, a land of wheat and barley, and vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey, a land in which a person will not lack anything. That description is read as a blessing. It was also a description of what managed land looks like when the management has been continuous for hundreds of years. The 17 practices that produced that abundance, the practices that the people working the terraces above Beit Horon and across the Judean hills and through the Shephelah lowlands did simultaneously, are the subject of this video. The footage you are watching is not metaphorical. The terraces, the walls, the floor cover, the rotation patterns, they have been documented continuously by archaeological survey since the 1950s. The practices are not lost. They were displaced. In the next 30 minutes, the 17 practices will pass through this video, not as a list to memorize, as a way of life observed across one autumn morning, 4 farmers, 3 villages, and the agricultural literature that has confirmed the underlying biology in the past 4 decades. The man walking the topmost terrace is one of the 4. The other 3 will appear as the morning continues. For those who want to bring something of this rhythm into their own backyard, not as imitation, but as adaptation, the biblical harvest system translates each of these practices into a 90-day plan with shopping lists, weekly templates, and a printable tracker. The full protocol is in the link below this video. The practices, as they appear in the morning, in the order the farmers will encounter them. The first is on the topmost terrace, where the old man stopped at the floor cover. The chip layer is doing 2 things simultaneously. The light cannot reach the soil surface, so dormant weed seeds cannot trigger germination. The decomposing organic material releases compounds that the soil scientists call allelopathic, the same compounds that wood chip mulch is documented to produce in modern Washington State University trials, suppressing weed germination by 80 to 95%. The verse that names the principle of bare ground producing thorns is in Genesis 3:18. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you. The verse that describes what happens when the floor is allowed to revert is in Proverbs 24:30. A vineyard of a man lacking sense, all overgrown with thorns. The cover prevents both. The second is in the same vineyard, 2 rows over. 1 in every 7 rows has not been pruned this year. The vines on that row have grown wild, untended, allowed to go fallow for the season. Leviticus 25:4 commanded a Sabbath rest every 7th year for the field, and the vineyard managers in this region applied a smaller version of the principle within a single growing year. Ohio State University researchers, in a 30-year controlled experiment, measured a 34% increase in beneficial microbial populations in plots rested every 7 years. Microbial populations are the actual food delivery system in soil. When they recover, every crop in the following 6 years costs less and produces more. The third is at the edge of the vineyard, where the rows meet the wall. The outer ring, roughly the last meter of every bed, has not been harvested. The grapes that ripened there have fallen to the ground. The grain field beside the vineyard, when it was harvested last month, was reaped only to within a meter of its boundary. Leviticus 19:9 named this practice. You shall not reap your field right up to its edge. neither shall you gather the gleanings after your harvest. The biology of the gleaning corner is two-layered. The dropped material returns organic matter to the soil, and the unharvested margin creates a forage edge that beneficial insects, parasitic wasps, lacewings, hoverflies, use as a hunting ground for the aphids and caterpillars that would otherwise reach the planted rows. The man on the topmost terrace finishes his walk and begins the descent toward his neighbor's plot, 2 terraces down. The fourth practice is visible in the neighbor's plot before the neighbor himself appears. Between the rows of barley, lentils have been seeded. Beans alternate with grain. The Deuteronomy 22.9 prohibition is clear. You shall not sow your vineyard with 2 kinds of seed, but the prohibition is specific to certain pairings. Allium-legume combinations were banned because of the documented interference between onion family compounds and the root nodules where legumes fix atmospheric nitrogen. Grain-legume combinations were not banned, they were practiced. Ezekiel 4:9 names the model, wheat and barley and beans and lentils together. The legume fixes nitrogen from the air, the grain consumes nitrogen heavily. The two together balance the soil chemistry without external input. The neighbor, the second farmer in this video, is 62. He walks out from the stone-walled house at the edge of his terrace carrying a small leather pouch. He is going to plant a small section of melons in a corner of the field. The seeds in the pouch were soaked overnight in water with a pinch of wood ash. By morning, the seed coats had softened. The germination enzymes had activated. Matthew 13, the parable of the sower, references the difference between seed that takes root quickly and seed that does not. Modern University of Kentucky trials have measured a 38 to 40% faster germination rate for pre-soaked seeds compared to dry-planted controls. The wood ash adds calcium and slightly raises the pH of the soak water, mimicking the alkaline soils of the Levantine highlands where these crops evolved. That is the fourth practice on this morning. The fifth practice is the wood ash itself, used in a different way. The neighbor reaches the corner where he plans to plant. He scoops a small quantity of dry ash from a stone container that sits at the edge of his planting area. The ash is from his hearth. He works a quarter cup into each planting hole before the seeds go in. Leviticus 6:10 referenced the priestly handling of altar ash. It was not discarded. It was placed deliberately. Wood ash contains potassium, calcium, and magnesium in slow-release carbonate form. Modern soil science calls it a low NPK mineral amendment. The neighbor calls it what his grandfather called it. The man from the topmost terrace has reached the neighbor by now. They speak briefly. They walk on together toward the third farmer's plot. The morning has warmed to the temperature where the limestone walls are warm to the touch. The sixth practice surrounds the third farmer's tomato bed. Hyssop, Origanum syriacum, a short, fragrant, woody herb planted at 3-foot intervals along the entire perimeter of the bed. The plant releases thymol and carvacrol, the same essential oil compounds found in commercial organic insect repellent sprays, continuously into the surrounding air. Aphids and whiteflies have a documented avoidance response to carvacrol. They navigate around the perimeter rather than through it. Psalm 51:7. Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. And 1 Kings 4:33. Solomon spoke of trees, from the cedar tree that is in Lebanon, even unto the hyssop that springeth out of the wall. Both reference a plant whose chemistry was understood as a protective barrier. A market gardener outside Asheville, North Carolina, who switched from pyrethrin sprays to a living hyssop perimeter in 2022, has documented 60% lower aphid pressure in her hyssop-bordered beds compared to her sprayed beds. The hyssop has not been reapplied. It has not been repurchased. It is a plant. It grows. The seventh practice is at the base of the same tomato bed. The third farmer has built a 4-inch ring of mulch around each plant, starting 6 inches from the stem. He waters into that ring only. He does not water the leaves. He does not water the open soil between plants. Isaiah 44:3 describes water poured upon the thirsty. But the thirsty is the root, not the leaf. Leaves are not thirsty. Roots are. Overhead watering evaporates before reaching roots in summer heat, creates the leaf moisture that breeds powdery mildew and blight, and misses the feeder roots that do the actual uptake. The mulch ring catches and directs water into the root zone rather than letting it spread to bare soil. The 8th practice is 20 meters from the tomato bed, around the base of an established fig tree. The 3rd farmer has piled smooth stones he removed from the planting rows during preparation, in a ring around the trunk, 8 inches out. The stones absorb solar heat during the day and release it slowly through the night, extending the effective growing season in cool months. They create natural infiltration channels for rain. Water hitting stone flows along the surface and concentrates at the stone-soil interface, entering the ground rather than running off the slope. Isaiah 5:2 described the owner of the vineyard who dug it and cleared it of stones. The cleared stones were not hauled away. They were redistributed. The morning has fully arrived. The sun is over the eastern ridge. The man from the topmost terrace and the neighbor have continued through the 3rd farmer's plot and are now walking toward the 4th farmer's land on the lowest terrace. The 9th practice is in transit. As they cross the path between the 3rd and 4th plots, they pass a section of harvested grain field. The stubble has not been left bare. White Dutch clover has been broadcast over the surface. The clover has germinated and is forming a low green cover across what would otherwise be exposed soil. Psalm 104:14. He causeth the grass to grow for the cattle, and herb for the service of man, that he may bring forth food out of the earth. The principle is that managed land is never bare. The cover crop holds moisture, fixes nitrogen, moderates soil temperature, and prevents weed germination by blocking light. Bare soil loses moisture to evaporation at 3 times the rate of covered soil. The Shephelah farmers, who saw 3 months of summer with almost no rainfall, did not have the option of bare soil.
The 10th practice is at the 4th farmer's compost pile, which is visible from the path. The pile has been building for 6 months. Layers of carbon material, leaves, straw, paper, dry stalks, alternate with layers of nitrogen material, kitchen scraps, fresh weeds, manure from the small flock of goats kept at the back of the property. The dung gate in Nehemiah 3:13 was specifically named because waste was managed deliberately, aged before being applied to fields. Fresh manure on food crop soil causes pathogen transfer, root burn from high ammonium concentrations, and nitrogen spikes that drive leaf growth at the expense of fruit. Composted manure does the opposite. The 4th farmer's pile, when it is ready in another 6 weeks, will go on the bed he has rested under Sabbath fallow this year. The 2 practices amplify each other. The 4th farmer himself appears now. He is 44 years old, the youngest of the 4 men in this video. His house is the smallest. His land is the lowest of the 4 terraces, where the runoff from above accumulates and the soil is heaviest. He is the inheritor of the practices, not the originator. His father walked these same rows. His grandfather walked them. The practices arrived to him already integrated into the rhythm of the work. The 11th practice is in his kitchen, visible through the open door as the men approach. A row of clay jars sits on a shelf. Each jar contains dry goods, lentils, wheat berries, dried beans. The surface of the contents in each jar is covered with a thin layer of olive oil, a 1/4 inch of oil. The seal that the oil creates excludes oxygen. Grain weevils and pantry moths cannot penetrate the oil layer. Moisture cannot enter. Jeremiah 32:14 referenced jars used to preserve documents, the same principle of oxygen exclusion. The practice extends the shelf life of the dry goods from 12 months to 3 years. The 4th farmer's grandmother taught him to do this. She did not know the word oxygen. She knew the result. The men gather at the doorway. The 4th farmer brings water in a clay vessel. They drink. Conversation continues for several minutes, in a language and at a pace that does not translate easily to a video transcript, but the substance of it is the morning's observation. They are comparing what each man saw on his walk. They are noting which practices look strong this season and which need adjustment. The conversation has been happening for generations. It is part of the management.
The 12th practice is on the path back from the 4th farmer's plot. The man from the topmost terrace stops at a fig tree that grew on the boundary between two terraces. The tree is old. It has not produced fruit reliably in 3 years. He has not given up on it. He has dug a shallow trench at the drip line, 6 inches deep, in a ring around the tree. He has filled the trench with finished compost from the pile they just passed. He has covered it lightly with soil. He has left the tree alone for the season. Luke 13:8 describes the vine dresser who said, "Let it alone this year also, until I shall dig about it and dung it." The practice is identical. The man's son will inherit the tree. The tree will fruit again, the man believes, in the fall after next. The 13th practice is at the edge of the 3rd farmer's path, where the path meets the stone-paved area near the well. A thin line of rock salt has been traced along the paver edges. Slugs and snails, which lose moisture rapidly when their soft bodies contact salt, will not cross the line. The salt stays on the hard surface. It is never applied to soil. Matthew 5:13, "You are the salt of the earth," used salt as a metaphor for preservation and protection. The practical application here is perimeter defense, not soil amendment. A salt application on cultivated soil would raise sodium levels, disrupt osmotic pressure in plant roots, and destroy the microbial community the other 12 practices have been building. On the stone path or paver edge, the salt protects without harming. The 14th practice is between the rows of the 3rd farmer's brassica bed, the cabbage, broccoli, and kale planted earlier in the season. Mustard greens have been interplanted at 1-foot intervals. Mustard, when its roots and leaves decompose in the soil, releases glucosinolate compounds that are toxic to root knot nematodes, the microscopic soil parasites that penetrate root systems and can collapse a brassica crop in a single season. Matthew 13:31, "The kingdom of heaven is like to a grain of mustard seed," referenced a plant whose presence in agricultural systems was so common it required no explanation. The 4th farmer's mustard greens get harvested for his table through the season. When the mustard stems are pulled at season end and turned into the soil, the glucosinolate breakdown continues for another 4 to 6 weeks. The 15th practice is in the corner of the 4th farmer's plot, where 3 trees have been planted in proximity: a pomegranate, a grapevine, a fig. The 3 together form what modern permaculture calls a guild, a mutually supporting plant community. The fig's wide canopy provides summer shade that moderates soil temperature around the vine and pomegranate roots. The vine uses the fig's branching structure as a living trellis. The pomegranate develops deep lateral roots that connect through mycorrhizal networks to the fig and vine, allowing underground nutrient exchange. The 3 together produce more food per square foot than any monoculture arrangement. Deuteronomy 8:8 listed the 7 species of the land: wheat, barley, vines, fig trees, pomegranates, olive oil, and honey. 3 of those species, planted in proximity, are doing the work of more than 3. The 16th practice is on a flexible cane of the same grapevine. The 3rd farmer has bent a healthy growing cane down to the soil. He has buried 6 inches of the cane's middle section 2 to 3 inches deep. The growing tip remains above ground. A flat stone holds the buried section in place. In 8 weeks, the buried section will have developed its own root system. At the end of the season, he will cut it free from the parent vine. He will have a new plant, genetically identical to the one he started with, already rooted, already accustomed to the soil. John 15:5, "I am the vine, you are the branches," described a propagation principle the farmers in this region had practiced for generations. Levantine vineyards expanded across hillsides for thousands of years on this principle. No nursery, no purchase. The vine produced the next generation of itself. The men are heading back up the terraces now. The morning is ending. The sun is high. They will return to their houses, to their tables, to their families. But before the morning closes, the 17th practice is visible at the back of the 4th farmer's house, in a small enclosed area where his wife tends a kitchen garden. A burlap sack, the same kind used to carry grain from the threshing floor, sits propped against the wall. The sack has been filled with topsoil. Lentils have been sown into the soil inside the sack, They are growing, 2 weeks old, sending roots through the topsoil and into the burlap fibers. The sack allows air exchange and drainage while keeping the growing medium contained. The lentils, like all legumes, are fixing nitrogen from the atmosphere through symbiotic bacteria, rhizobium, colonizing their root nodules. At the end of the season, the entire contents of the sack, root mass, fixed nitrogen, decomposing plant material, will be turned into the bed that needs the most nitrogen input next year. Judges 6:19 and Ruth 3:15 referenced permeable, woven containers used for agricultural material. The principle was understood. The sack is doing what the verse implied. That is the 17th. The morning is over. The 4 men return to their houses. The terraces remain as they were before sunrise. The cover stays on the floor. The clover holds the harvested fields. The hyssop continues to release thymol into the air. The mustard between the brassicas continues to send glucosinolates into the soil. The compost pile continues to break down. The vine cane buried under the stone continues to root. Nothing is dramatic. Nothing requires intervention. The practices, once installed, run on their own. This is the contrast that the modern American backyard does not see. The practices the 4 men were observing on this autumn morning were not 17 separate techniques. They were one integrated system in 17 aspects that ran continuously when maintained and reverted within a generation when abandoned. The Babylonian conquest of 587 BC removed the population that had been maintaining the system. Within 20 years, archaeological surveys show the terraces collapsed, the floor cover disappeared, and the ground reverted to thorn cover. The system did not die. The maintenance ended. The same system is available now. The verses are still in the same places they have always been. The biology has been confirmed by Penn State, Ohio State, Washington State, the Rodale Institute, the University of Kentucky. The practices are not theoretical. They are documented. The farmers who run them, in Lancaster County and Asheville, in pockets across the United States and Europe and the original Levantine region, are running the same morning the 4 men were running on the terraces above Beit Horon, with the necessary regional adaptations. For those who want the practices structured into a 90-day starter plan with shopping lists for week-by-week implementation and a printable tracker for the kitchen, that is the biblical harvest system. The link is in the description below this video. The morning the 4 men walked through is not a metaphor. It is a description of what an integrated agricultural system looks like when the management is continuous. Deuteronomy 8 names the abundance of the land that was produced by it. The 17 practices are named one by one across the surrounding chapters and across the larger biblical agricultural literature. They have been confirmed by modern science, one practice at a time, across the past 4 decades, by independent research groups working in soil biology, entomology, plant pathology, and agronomy. Subscribe if you want me to keep walking these. We do one biblical farming practice a week, paired with the modern science that confirmed it. The light is at full noon now. The terraces above Beit Horon are quiet. The 4 men are inside. The system continues without them. That is the design. It runs because the practices were installed to run. The covered floor, the Sabbath rest, the gleaning corner, the paired crops, the soaked seeds, the wood ash, the hyssop perimeter, the root zone watering, the stone mulch, the living blanket, the aged compost, the dig and dung, the salt edge, the mustard companion, the 7 species guild, the vine layering, the burlap legume. 17 practices, 1 morning, 4 farmers. 3,000 years of continuity, paused for some centuries, picked up again where the practices were preserved. The terraces above Beit Horon were not waiting for technology. They were waiting for management. Management that does not extract revenue from a customer relationship. Management that ran on free pruning debris, ash from the hearth, water in the right place, and the discipline to cover what God designed not to be left bare. The man from the topmost terrace closes his door. The autumn morning is finished. Tomorrow he will walk the rows again.